Hi and welcome. So this is part 2 of my Q&A. So I'm gonna answer some more questions that people kindly left me. Um, I am also doing, you may have seen, I'm also doing separate videos answering the question about the aspects and how to recognize them. So I already did one about the conjunction, and so I will be doing other major aspects. But there are some other questions that I got that I would like to answer now. So they're not so clear cut for me in terms of the answer. The answers are not going to be maybe so clear cut, but I will still try to make the video a little bit shorter than the last one, or the recording a little bit shorter than the last one. But I am a little bit conflicted about houses, and one of the questions is about houses. Monique M asked if you haven't already done a video on this, could you talk about the different house systems like tropical, whole sign houses versus Placidus, etc., and which one you might feel is more accurate? So, I think they all can work in different ways, and I think it depends on the person that is doing the reading, and I think it's actually okay to use different systems to kind of experiment and look at different house systems. You look at the same chart with different house systems. Now, I will also say I will have to admit that I haven't done something that I really want to do, which is to get a better grasp of what these house systems were originally created for, what the original idea was. And so once I learned that, it can become easier to know, okay, what kind of reading do I want to do and which house system works the best for that. I've heard people say that, for example, Placidus works better for transits. Other people have said whole sign works better for transits. I've used mainly 3 different systems. So I used to always use Placidus. Then I moved to using equal house system with a little bit of dabbling in whole sign. And currently I'm kind of using Placidus mostly. But I do, in my head, I might still consider the whole sign, especially because it just makes it, the whole sign makes it so, each house corresponds to a particular sign. And so it's almost like whenever a planet moves from one sign to the next, it automatically changes house. So it automatically changes the area of life that it's mostly affecting is automatically changing because of the sign. And that makes sense to me in terms of transits in some ways. So sometimes it's easy to think of whole signs when you're trying to do transits. But I do mostly still use Placidus, so even for transits I will use Placidus. But I'm just not ruling out any of them. I can easily just find myself looking at someone's chart using the equal house system or the whole sign system. But mostly I will use Placidus. I suppose it's my gut instinct, and also one of my favorite astrologers said that she uses Placidus, and whereas previously I have heard astrologers say that Placidus kind of the way that it was originally created, which I need to learn more about that, but the way that Placidus was originally created actually makes it so it's not always compatible with birth charts, for example. But I kind of went back to Placidus anyway. I kind of trust some astrologers who I particularly whose content I particularly enjoy. I kind of tend to trust them in a way. But I mean, I can't tell you which system is correct to use or which is more accurate, because I think I'm still at the experimentation stage. I have just settled on Placidus for now, kind of thing. I can do more videos on that, but I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Now, Monique also asked how would work out what type of career a person would be best suited to according to their chart. What else would we need to look at besides where a person's MC is and what house and sign it's covering? Ooh, that's an interesting question. Again, it's not so clear cut for me because I think there's so many things that you could look at, and it's not the case that you're definitely going to have success in a particular career, or that you're going to enjoy a particular career based on what your MC is. There is a good chance that that has to do with your vocation and your sort of your life purpose. Like the MC does have to do with your vocation. So if you're aligning well with your chart, you may find that you do fall into a job or a career that is related to your MC sign, but it's not a guarantee. I would also look at the 6th house. So the 6th house has to do with kind of the work itself, kind of your day-to-day, what you do, your day-to-day working, your health, your job, your tasks. And as we know, jobs often have to do with like tasks that you're doing, like physical tasks or some kind of service as well. So 6th house also has to do with service. So I would look at the 6th house as well. I think that can give clues, but I wouldn't use a chart to kind of make sure that like, okay, I'm going to try and go into this career because that's what my midheaven suggests, kind of, or what my 6th house suggests. You still have to go with like what aligns for you personally, and once you do that, hopefully the chart will also align with that. So you and the chart are like aligned on a soul level. So whatever you do, like, it will be reflected in the chart in some way, but you don't have to follow the chart in the sense that like, I'm going to do this because this is guaranteed to be the best option or something like that. You probably understand what I mean. But I would look at the midheaven and the 6th house, like they can give clues. And there's other things that you can look at kind of when you see the chart as a whole. It can give clues to what kind of personality it is and what kind of a vocation they might have. And then your other question was about the aspects, which I am covering in separate videos. And Manic Mercurian asked also, in addition to the other questions that I already answered in the previous video, what is your take on 12th house placements? Ooh, this is very interesting because the 12th house placements, and the reason I didn't answer this in the previous Q&A was because I needed time to kind of think about it and let it sink in, because the 12th house is so mysterious. I would say the 12th house planets are a little bit more subdued. They're a little bit more hidden. I talked recently in a video about an audio recording about the sun in the 12th house, but conjunct the ascendant. So there's a bit of 12th house stuff going on in that recording. But the 12th house, I mean, it's the last house. It's like the house of the undoing in a way, and it's the last house before we go into the first house, which is a very conscious house and the house of the self. So the 12th house is like, I would think of it as if you're like, let's say, if you're spending a lot of time in your 12th house, let's say you have a lot of transits in the 12th house or something like that, it's like you can become much more secluded, and it's a way for you to reflect. It represents like this reflecting and this getting rid of the baggage. It's like sleep as well. So if the 12th house is sleep, the first house is like being awake and alert. And so you need to sleep first before you become alert, So the 12th house kind of represents this sleep for me. It's, but we're still very active when we're asleep, in the sense that, we can dream. There's still processes that are going on. So it's kind of like you're resting. It's like a resting period or a reflection period. It's a spiritual house. It's a house that has to do with, resting, sleeping, unconscious things that are coming up for you now. And I know you asked about the placements. I'm talking a little bit more in terms of like the transits. So, with the transits, it does feel like the person becomes more secluded, and it's like they're getting ready to re-enter, like re-emerge almost, if that makes sense. But with placements, like planets in the 12th house, they're just acting in those kinds of ways. They're acting in ways that are more subdued. there's a maybe less of an obvious nature to them. It's not like they're in the first house where it's very obvious and clear and strong and assertive and apparent. In the 12th house, it's like they're asleep, or they're connecting themselves to some kind of a spiritual realm. So Sun in the 12th house can have to do with it can represent somebody who's kind of actively involved in spirituality, or is kind of just has an active imagination or an active dream life, or like they can dream very fanciful dreams at night. Mars in the 12th house can actually be more subdued in their energy. Mars is very energetic, but in the 12th house the energy goes inward, goes into a subdued state. Maybe they're also putting a lot of energy into spiritual things. Maybe they're very assertive, and when it comes to spiritual things, maybe they are a go-getter when it comes to like trying to understand their dreams, or trying to understand the spiritual symbols, or trying to understand astrology maybe, or trying to understand things that we can't see but we intuitively sense that they're there. So maybe the Mars in the 12th house person is the sort of person who goes after what they want, which is Mars, when it comes to the spiritual realm. So they may be very active in the spiritual realm. Maybe they're doing astrology or tarot or something like that. So there can be an element of that. So it's like the planets are getting ready to, like in your chart, they represent this kind of being not fully conscious, or a little bit more asleep, but still there, very much there. They're just connected to something that you may not understand. It's harder to understand the 12th house and the 12th house placements, I think. So they're there. It's like when we're sleeping, we're still very much there, but we're not really conscious of what's going on. And when we dream, it's like that. We can have very active dreams, but we can have very vivid dreams. I mean, but once we wake up, we may forget about the dream. You know what I mean? So, and the question from Manic Mercurian about why I decided to start using Placidus again instead of equal house. I think I maybe talked about it in the beginning of the recording. I talked about houses. And it was like intuition. It was gut. And it was also me trusting certain astrologers and just trying it out, and it just kind of felt right. I used to think that they should all be equal size, because that just made sense to me for a while. But then I started thinking, well, why can't they be different sizes? It's like rooms in a house are not all the same size. Houses on a street are not all the same size. It doesn't mean that one is necessarily more important than the other, but it just, there's something quirky and something cool about having them different sizes as well. As much as I like the idea of them all being equal and it's very clear cut, but maybe it's okay to also for me to have them different sizes and just see how that works. And in terms of accuracy, I still have to experiment a lot more to understand. I always, for my own chart, for example, I always find that some things work better with Placidus. Some placements, like planets and houses, some of them work better with Placidus. Others work better with equal house. And it's just a case of me needing to experiment more and see what works for me. And I suggest that everybody just does what works for them. And that's it. So if you have more questions, you can leave comments on this video or any other video, and I will try to put together another Q&A recording. So thank you very much and stay tuned.